Hello everyone and welcome to Season 6, Episode 5 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host, Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches of 2021 with match number 46 on our list, which is the Limitless World Title match between the champion Daniel Garcia and the challenger JD Drake from the Limitless Wrestling The Games We Play event held on May the 7th of 2021. Daniel Garcia, the breakout star of 2021. I don't think there are any questions there. After suffering, a horrific leg injury in a car crash in 2019, this guy came back, really started to make a name for himself in 2020, and then coming out, of that first pandemic year in 2021, this guy set the independent wrestling world ablaze. Just high quality matches all over the place. If 2020 was the year of Lee Moriarty on the indies during the pandemic, 2021 was the year of Daniel Garcia. So impressive that, he got an AEW contract out of his independent performances. And that dude has been in elite level, no pun intended, competition in AEW. He's wrestled, all of the indie guys that he would have grown up idolizing, which is, I love stuff like that. It's super cool. He's wrestled CM Punk and Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson and Eddie Kingston. He's now, as of the time of me recording this video, in a stable with Chris Jericho. So just really, really cool, and just a testament to the hard work that this man put in throughout the year 2021 to really, get that acclaim and get to where he is now. What really kind of was the pinnacle, I'll say, of that independent run was Daniel Garcia's short reign as the Limitless World Champion. So Limitless Wrestling is an independent that runs out of Maine. You can find their shows on IWTV. Daniel Garcia won the belt from a departing Christian Casanova before he went to NXT, where he's having success there in NXT 2.0 as the current North American champion Carmelo Hayes. So Garcia won that belt. And went on, he didn't have a very lengthy run, but he had this heel run on top as the champion, which to me, in ways very reminiscent of Daniel Bryan's Ring of Honor world title run, where, he was a heel throughout 2006. Different in a way, because, Garcia is very much more of a punk, I'll say, than Daniel Bryan was. He comes across as very unlikable, as somebody you want to see get his ass kicked like you do in this match. But he's somebody that has such a high ring IQ and such a technical ability that he's able to use his technical ability. He's good, but the way he uses it just makes you hate him more and more and more and more. This match is, in my opinion, probably the best performance of his career. Maybe not the best match he's had, but this match is the Daniel Garcia show through and through. And that is not to discredit JD Drake. JD Drake does an amazing job in this match too, playing, the big, bear-like counterpart to Daniel Garcia, being this, wiry, I'll say it, he's a prick in this match, right? Drake does a great job, but this match really is about Garcia. It's early in his title run. He's really crafting that heel persona and coming across as just, a complete, smarmy jerk. And he does so great. I'll give you a spoiler right now. This is not the only Daniel Garcia match you are going to see on this countdown. Like I said, this dude was the star, the breakout star of 2021. So expect more from him. Right from the get-go, though, they do such a great job establishing the dynamic in this match. Garcia's really tentative at the start, and he's such a great punk heel. He's constantly grabbing the ropes and tying himself in the ropes, so the referee forces Drake off of him. But while he's in the ropes, he's talking mad trash, and he's like throwing kicks at, JD Drake and just all of these arrogant things. But it's all a great mind game because you can see the frustration in JD Drake build through the early periods of this match. And Garcia, has this hope, of course, that this frustration is going to boil over and, it could result in him getting destroyed. But his hope is that it's going to result in JD Drake making a big mistake out of anger and allowing him to capitalize and start to break the big man down. Very early on, they go to the mat and Garcia tries to use, his wiry frame, but JD Drake is so big. He's such like a big, grizzly bear that, he just can't be overtaken by Garcia. There's an excellent moment too, really selling that frustration going through Drake, where Garcia grabs the ropes again and Drake just starts like pounding and rapping his knuckles, trying to get him to break. Garcia, he's got this temper too that we see in a lot of his matches. And, that starts to flare up where he seems like he's going to trade with Drake and strike, but then, cooler heads prevail and he backs down a little bit. But this leads to another great moment where, Drake again, calm, cool, collected, goes to lock up, and Drake just, blasts Garcia with a backdrop driver right out of the lockup. It was unexpected. It was cool and set, this great story even further into motion with this match. Drake goes on the offense. He does some arm control. Garcia tries to take him over and he just sits on his arm. Again, I've talked about it so many times in these videos, how much I love the big, small dynamic in wrestling. So that is fully on display here and it is so, so good. Garcia, again, in the ropes, talking trash, and he throws a chop, which is the JD Drake specialty. If you're not familiar with JD Drake, he's a member of the Wingmen faction, a regular staple on the AEW Dark shows. He really doesn't fit in with that group. It's a really weird casting for him because he's such just this big, blue collar, just badass guy. He's super stiff, has these amazing chops. We saw, a glimpse of this on AEW Dynamite recently, where him and his partner in the Workhorsemen, the supremely underrated Anthony Henry, squared off against Bryan Danielson now, and Jon Moxley, and it basically a tag team squash, but it was maybe a glimpse of JD Drake, in his real kind of character and not that wingman persona. So I hope that's, while he is signed to AEW, I really hope that's something they lean into because he's not being utilized nearly as well as he could be, in my humble opinion. So we're going to this match, and Garcia's kind of baiting him by throwing these chops, being like, all right, come on, chop me. Makes another mistake where he goes for an arm drag and just can't take Drake down whatsoever. So Drake, starts to stomp him, and Garcia's having to dodge and avoid all of these strikes. So then JD Drake just uses this beautiful arm drag and holds on to control. And it was great because this was him throwing a head game back at Garcia, basically being like, you want to try to use my stuff to fire me up? Well, I'm going to use your stuff that you can't do on me because I'm so much bigger than you. And, I'm going to rub that salt in the wounds and hopefully frustrate you so that you stop having that cool head. You stop going to those ropes. You want to trade with me, which I saw earlier that you wanted to do, because I'm going to blow you away when it comes to the striking. So again, just really cool, almost kind of subtle stuff that you have to, kind of read into the story a little bit, but it's so, so good. And it's really what makes this match land on this list, because at its core, it's a very basic wrestling match with a basic story that these two guys pull off masterfully. We finally get the moment, though, where, Drake's frustration, pays off for Garcia. So Garcia, he, tries to go to the ear to break out of this arm control, and he, hits this slap, and he avoids all of these chops. There's an excellent moment before then where, Garcia kind of expects the Drake chop, so he kind of covers up, and Drake just blasts him with a drop kick out of nowhere, which was super cool. But finally, the frustration builds, and Drake gets him to the corner and goes to unload with the, Kobashi style chops. But Garcia is able to squeak out of that, and when Drake misses the chop, Garcia flies in with a big knee to the back, Macho Man Randy Savage style, kicks the turnbuckle into Drake's face. And this, finally allows him to get some control. He starts stepping on the hand, to try to stop Drake from being able to use those chops. And he just unloads with all of these shots. And he's really good where, Drake will kind of get, a slap or a shot in there, but Garcia is able to weather the storm and basically, take one to hit 10. And again, when you have these big, small guy stories and the heel is the smaller guy, so you have to kind of try to avoid, falling into the routine that we have where, we as humans, I think we tend to favor the underdog. We like the underdog, so it becomes natural that we might want to cheer for Garcia to beat the larger guy, but he's so great at reminding you he's a heel. I talked about this in the Johnny Gargano and Kushida video recently. So here Garcia, he's raking his bootlaces across the eyes of Garcia, or across the eyes of Drake, and adding in all of these little dirty tactics along the way, just so you remember, oh right, this is the guy I want to lose. This guy is a piece of garbage. There's another moment too that I really like where, Garcia's kind of got like ground control. He's got like a seated abdominal stretch on. And Drake, is moving toward the rope, and Garcia has to kind of turn him away from the rope. So he lifts up like the massive like tree trunk leg of JD Drake and really sells the girth of this man's leg, and, the struggle just to get him away from the ropes. Again, these little things that just add to the overall size dynamic that they have. Finally, Garcia, his prickiness gets the best of him. He hits a back chop. If you listen to independent wrestling commentary from Eddie Kingston, in the early 2000s, so disrespectful is the back chop. And that fires Drake up, and Garcia's running around avoiding all of these chops, and he starts throwing these leg kicks at Drake from a distance, and Drake starts to trade back, and they're trading these leg kicks, and then out of nowhere Drake shows incredible flexibility for being a big heavier guy, and hits this wild head kick, and it sends Garcia back into the ropes, and his arms tie up Andre the Giant style. And it is the coolest thing because, that's often, like a big guy spot, right? So you'd see a guy like Andre or a super heavyweight kind of use that when, wrestlers are a little bit limited with their mobility, and it's a, great crowd popping spot. But to see little, skinny Daniel Garcia caught in these ropes, it was a little funny, but it made perfect sense because it finally gave this opening where he couldn't avoid the chops. And of course, JD Drake lights him up with chops while he's tied into the ropes. It's so great. It's so satisfying. The crowd loves it. It is just excellent, excellent stuff. From there, we get, a run of JD Drake offense and some near falls. He hits a big splash in the corner. He slams him into the buckles. He hits a big running boot scrape and a Vader bomb and, a big lariat, and locks in a rear naked choke that Garcia is able to get the ropes on. And, unloads more chops. And there's a point where Garcia just completely crumbles after taking some chops. And as Garcia tries to pick him up to go for his finishing move, the drill bit, Garcia kind of like crumples to the mat. Bret Hart, playing possum style against Diesel at, Survivor Series 95. And so when Drake pulls him up, Garcia sees this opportunity to hit like a flash Yakuza kick and goes for a brainbuster, but, he can't, get the massive Drake over. So Drake turns that into a crash landing. And it leads to this really, really awesome near fall where Drake goes for like a big back senton while Garcia's on the mat, and Garcia kind of just narrowly avoids it and grabs a crucifix roll-up for two. It would have been a great ending for Garcia to squeak out the victory. So the first time I saw this match, I totally bought it as the finish. It was a really, really great near fall. They did an excellent job with it. Drake goes back, to the rear naked choke, and Garcia gets the roll up back into the pin for it. Transitions that into like a really deep guillotine choke. And then we get a great moment where Drake fights out of the guillotine, hits the drill bit, which is basically, under its normal circumstances, it's like a butterfly lock, so like kind of lifted up like a double arm DDT, but then turned into like a spinning neck breaker. Very cool move. So he hits this, out of the guillotine as a counter, and Garcia, is able to roll out to the floor. And then for our finish, so we do get a little bit of overbooking here with some interference, but it really, really works for this match. So Daniel Garcia is cornered by his fellow Buffalo brother, Kevin Blackwood. Drake follows Garcia out to the floor to try to get him in, to finish him off after the drill bit. And he goes for a chop, and Garcia manages to avoid that. Blackwood gets caught in the crossfire, takes this chop from Drake. Garcia, tries to take advantage of that, and Drake, sees all of this coming, and he kind of has this move where he throws Garcia up into the ropes from the floor, and as he's bounding off, just decks him with this wild lariat. He rolls him into the ring, and he hits this big moonsault, which is so impressive for, a guy of his size, and he hits the moonsault for two. But something happens when he hits that moonsault. All of that weight coming down on his knee. He jams up his knee. So it's this, now we have this little wrinkle in this match where Garcia now has this opening he could take advantage of. And, Drake tries to weather through and he goes for the drill bit one more time, but he can't lift Garcia because of that bad leg. And this, gives a perfect moment for Kevin Blackwood to get up on the apron. Drake, again, he's all about weathering this injury, weathering this storm, and winning this title. So he sees, Blackwood come up and he clotheslines him off the apron. But before he can turn his attention back to Garcia, Blackwood from the floor, just out of the referee's viewpoint, is able to grab Drake's foot. And while he's got his foot, Garcia flies in with a drop kick to the knee. They do this excellent moment where it still seems like, Drake's going to persevere because Garcia charges in again and he just wallops him with another lariat. But he goes for like a Kenta Kobashi-esque like burning lariat, which Garcia's able to counter into a knee bar. Drake's knee at this point is pretty much done for. Garcia starts viciously stomping away on that knee, locks the knee bar in even tighter. And what I love about this is you had this little blip of interference from Kevin Blackwood. Wasn't anything too crazy. One could even argue in a way there's a justification there because technically Drake put his hands on him first with the chop on the floor, but it was just this one little moment that led to this opening. And I love it because so many times, with these matches where you have this interference, it leaves you unfulfilled because nobody really comes out looking good. The face that loses, well, he lost because he was subjected to interference. That sucks. The heel that wins, well, he couldn't have won without that interference. But Garcia is so good technically that he's able to capitalize on this brief little moment, and he's so technically proficient that he's able to make JD Drake tap out. And it's so good here because here both guys come out looking great. Garcia looks amazing because he made the much bigger JD Drake tap out. JD Drake loses nothing in this loss because had his foot not have been grabbed for that brief second, he probably would have won this match. But, who knows? But it also opens the door for this rematch where, Drake still could lay claim to a title shot due to the disputed finish. Drake 100% is going to want to get his hands on Kevin Blackwood. So you have all of this great stuff you can do coming out of this match. And the actual finish is beautiful because while Drake is in this submission move before he taps out, he's screaming in agony, but he's staring daggers at Kevin Blackwood on the floor and he's just flipping him off with the middle finger, basically saying like, I'm about to tap because of you and you're going to get yours for it, son. He taps out. Garcia retains the title. Absolutely fantastic match. These guys would go on to have another great match, a rematch for the title at the Vacation Land Cup 2021. You can check both of these matches out on IWTV. They are incredibly worth your time. You can subscribe to my channel here on YouTube so that you never miss a video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50. And please join me again tomorrow as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50.